You know, these are strange days indeed when an immunologist, albeit a very good one, becomes a household name. But that's exactly what's happened to Dr Anthony Fauci. His expertise fighting the coronavirus pandemic has made him a hero to many. Just not his boss, the US president. Talk about shooting the messenger. Donald Trump continually undermines his chief scientific advisor, calling him alarmist, and scoffing when he urges caution about reopening the economy. But Dr Fauci's not worried. Instead, he's getting on with trying to beat COVID-19. And tonight, he's got important news to share about a vaccine and the way Australia is tackling this nightmare.
The worst efficacy is in 65 and older.
When it comes to understanding and fighting viruses, Dr Anthony Fauci is the man you want on your side.
You don't want to impress people and razzle-dazzle them with your knowledge. You just want them to understand what you're talking about.
As the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in Washington, D.C. since 1984, he's been called upon to advise 6 presidents.
I'm working directly on AIDS, both clinically and from a basic science standpoint.
When all manner of outbreaks, including HIV, SARS and Ebola, threatened communities.
This is a bad virus.
When the most threatening of all hit,
For a while, life is not going to be the way it used to be in the United States.
Dr Fauci was asked to join the White House Coronavirus Task Force and became the president's de facto public health spokesperson.
We are living through an historic situation because I've been asked over the decades, ever since I was a trainee, what's the thing that keeps you up at night, Dr. Fauci? I got to ask that question 100 times, 1,000 times. And the thing that keeps me up at night would be the perfect storm of a respiratory-borne illness that's new, that's a virus that's transmitted, 1, very, very easily, and 2, that has a degree of morbidity and mortality that's serious and significant. That's the perfect storm as far as I'm concerned. And unfortunately, right now, we're living through that perfect storm. We've never had that in the last 102 years.
Universally, globally, certainly in Australia, all hope is now on a coronavirus vaccine. The hope is that it will be available by the end of this year, or if not, early next year. Is that hope justified?
You know, I believe it is. There are, right now in the United States, 3 candidates out of 6 that we're supporting that are in advanced phase 3 trial, which means the question is being asked directly. Not only is it safe, but does it actually work? Is it effective? The proof of the pudding, obviously, is going to be what the result of the trial is. But those kinds of inklings makes us have some aspirational hope that by the time we get to the end of the year, we'll have a vaccine.
Today's a day of hope, and Australia needs hope, the world needs hope.
As you might know, Australia has partnered up with a vaccine being produced in part by the UK's Oxford University. Do you accept that that is one of the leading global candidates in the world of vaccines?
That was one of the 3 I was talking about, because the candidate that comes out of the UK is now being tested by the British in Brazil and in South Africa.
And that vaccine then will be available at the end of the year more universally?
You're not going to have immediately hundreds of millions of doses. That's when you have to start making a prioritization of who gets it. You would probably give it to the frontline workers, the health workers, the people who are going to be taking care of sick patients, as well as the individuals who are at a greater risk of serious complications from infections.
You know, we are all hoping for some solution to this awful time, but also I think people are quite scared of the speed of the promise of this vaccine. Are corners being cut to make these vaccines ready?
If you just look and say, well, wait a minute, you said this usually takes a few years, and now you did it in a year or less. Did you sacrifice anything that would be troublesome? And the answer, quite frankly, is no. Even though it looks like it's very, very fast, the speed of it is only because of the advances in technology
If a vaccine can be produced, Dr Fauci, does that mean life goes back to normal?
That's a good question. And the answer is I cannot tell you that right now because it's really going to depend on what the level of efficacy is. I would think as we gradually go into next year with a good vaccine and good public health, after a period of time, that could be a year or two or so, we will gradually get enough protection globally that we will not have to have the kind of very, very strict concerns that we have now.
You can do whatever you want. This is Australia. It's free.
I do not need a mask.
Allegedly lying on their border declaration passes.
What crime have I committed?
We've seen people, breaching lockdown. We've seen people trying to breach borders.
Did you spit or cough on police?
We've seen people spitting on police, putting themselves at risk as well as the community. How much faith do you have in people actually using the vaccine if it becomes available and proven to be successful?
We've learned that if you want the community to accept something that they have concern about, you've got to be extremely truthful and transparent about all the data, which we will be. When you hear things from the federal government, obviously there's always a concern. Are they really giving us the straight scoop? So you've got to embrace and engage people at the community level.
While we wait for this elusive and much sought-after vaccine, what do you expect the pandemic to do? How much better or worse do you expect it to be before then?
It is entirely in our hands what will happen. The situation in the United States has been very difficult because as we try to open the economy, in certain states, the cases went up because we didn't do it as strictly as we could have. So you went up to 30,000, 40, 50, 60. There was even one point about a month or so ago, we were having 70,000 cases a day and over 1,000 deaths.
Are you frustrated when you see those numbers as you've just described them? I mean, that must have been a horror story for you.
Yeah, and I think you described it extraordinarily well. It was and is extremely frustrating. When the recommendation was made, these are the guidelines of what you should do. There were some states when we were saying avoid crowds and wear masks, and you see TV clips of people crowded around bars with no masks on. That's a perfect setup to have a problem. When we talk about who did it right, Australia always comes up as one of the countries that has done it right. You got hit badly, you suffered the way many of us have, but when you look comparatively speaking, you've done a really good job.
But we've got to keep doing it, don't we, as Victoria has shown us?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Coming up, how would you say you're getting on with Donald Trump these days?
It's complicated.
Butting heads.
How about that for a euphemism?
How to beat COVID.
I never, ever have a sugarcoat anything that's a scientific evidence.
By telling the president...
We've listened to Dr. Fauci. I haven't always agreed with him.
What he doesn't want to hear.
All that other stuff, quite frankly, is noise.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Like oil and water, it seems science and politics do not mix in the age of coronavirus.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
None of us have ever been told to slow down on testing. That just is a fact. In fact, we will be doing more testing.
Dr. Fauci is great. I like Dr. Fauci a lot. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci.
As the pandemic continues to grimly rip through America, the relationship between President Trump and his public health spokesperson, Dr Anthony Fauci, appears more and more toxic.
Dr. Fauci's made some mistakes. He wants to play all sides of the equation. We've listened to Dr. Fauci. I haven't always agreed with him, and that's, I think, pretty standard. That's okay.
Everything I do is voluntarily.
With the ever-wishful president contradicting and criticising Dr Fauci's straight-talking and sober assessments.
I was surprised by his answer, actually, because, it's just, to me, it's not an acceptable answer.
How would you say you're getting on with Donald Trump these days?
Not bad at all. Sometimes I don't see him for a while, and sometimes I see him, a couple of times a week. But our personal relationship is good. I know you can see in the papers there's this tension, but in reality, when you get in the same room and discuss things, that our relationship is fine. It's a good relationship.
When you see that the president has retweeted Fire Fauci, that he contradicts what you say about loosening up the economy, he sends out material of your supposed mistakes, media is briefed on that in an attempt to undermine you, that does not look like a good relationship.
Well, I would say it's complicated. How about that for a euphemism?
Tell me more, tell me more.
No, I mean, it's a situation where it isn't all what it seems. In reality, the relationship itself is fine. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, we have a relationship, and then when you see things happen, I think it was very unfortunate. One of the things you mentioned when, a list was sent out to journalists about so-called mistakes I made, which were really not mistakes, quite frankly. That was a little bit, I don't know what the right word is. I think disturbing and unfortunate would be a good word, that should not have happened.
Surely it hurts you.
That does not influence the people that I care about. The people that I don't care about, I don't really care. So it doesn't really make any difference to me. My job as a scientist, a physician, a public health official is to protect the health and the welfare, not only of the American people, but of the entire world, because we live in a global community. All that other stuff, quite frankly, is noise that I don't pay attention to.
The pushback against you, though, has been quite personal, hasn't it? I mean, how extreme has it gone?
Yeah, well, I've had people during charge times disagree with me, and we've kind of settled it out. But now to get death threats, to get my family harassed, my wife and my 3 children, I mean, that to me is absolutely preposterous. And there are some people that actually stoke that, encourage that. I mean, if you look at some of the networks that I will not mention that actually spend a lot of time literally stimulating that kind of behavior, which is absolutely ridiculous that goes on.
I can't imagine that you would have expected this to be the reaction.
Yeah.
As you say, you're standing up, giving a public health message, hopefully one that might save lives.
Right. And it has become so inappropriately and intensively politicized that it's almost as if when I give a message of public health, that somehow I'm doing something directly against you, deliberately to hurt you. I mean, of course, we understand that when you shut down or limit activity in society, that has a negative effect on the economy. People lose their jobs. That's clear. That's the reason why, if you listen to my words, I'm as emphatic about the need to open up the economy to get the jobs back. I talk about that more than anything, but I talk about it in the context of doing it in a measured, prudent way.
Would it have helped your position, your message, if the president had been clearer in his interpretation of what you were saying?
It would have always and is always better when you have a strong, unified message that people can consistently hear.
Why on earth would your administration be involved in a campaign at this point to discredit Dr. Fauci?
Well, he's a little bit of an alarmist. That's okay. A little bit of an alarmist.
He describes you as alarmist.
No, I describe myself as a realist.
Yeah, no, the president says you're alarmist.
I know, but I counter that by saying that I'm a realist.
Well, how would you characterize the president?
I don't characterize the president. I mean, he's his own person. I don't do that.
Is there any evidence to suggest that, as with malaria, it might be used as a prophylaxis against COVID-19?
No, the answer is no.
As a scientist, what was your reaction when he was giving some health tips in how to deal with coronavirus? You know, taking malaria drugs.
Without seeing too much, I'm probably more of a fan of that than maybe than anybody.
And when he mused about using disinfectant to clean coronavirus from our internal organs.
And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or?
The way I look at it is that rather than countering a person or a statement, that you can functionally counter it by giving out the correct information.
Did you ever consider sugarcoating your opinions to keep the boss happy?
Never. I haven't done that. I've been director of the institute that I direct, the Infectious Disease Institute, for 36 years. I've been involved with HIV for 39 years, and I never, ever have, nor will I ever sugarcoat anything that's a scientific evidence and scientific facts. Because that's directly anti-science, which would be an inherent contradiction in my life, which I don't plan on doing.
He's got a very good approval rating, and I like that. It's good, because remember, he's working for this administration.
Do you think that's why your approval rating is so high? I must say, an approval rating that has the president a little jealous, I think.
I don't know about that, but...
They're highly thought of, but nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.
When you're in a time of stress, and we are certainly in a difficult period, globally, the whole planet is in that situation, people do gravitate towards and look for candor, honesty, and an articulate description of where we are. They want to know the truth.
He was a great basketball player. Did anybody know that? A couple of years ago, but a few years ago. The head never changes. The attitude never changes.
Over the last 8 months, have there been days where you wished you'd pursued your basketball career?
Well, the answer is, sometimes I fantasize about what it would be to do something else, but right now I'm right in the middle of what I've trained my entire life for, so I don't have any thoughts of doing anything different. I do see that in the future, and that's my message when people always say, what message do you have for people? My message is that we're going to get out of this. We're going to end this, guarantee. It's going to end globally. It's going to end in Australia. It's going to end in the United States. It's going to end all over the world because we have the capability of doing it, and it's up to us.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.